friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using this adorable Let's Go Nuts stamp set from Lawn Fawn. Is anyone else as excited about this set as I am? I have stamped out all of my images on some Nina Solar White cardstock with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, and as you can see, I just needed to use all of these guys. There's only one that I did not stamp out, and he'll end up on the inside of the card. So as I'm sure you know, if you've been watching my channel for any length of time, red squirrels are one of my favorite animals. So I'm going to color a few of these guys with this combo, which is E15, E17, and E19. So I laid in my shadows with that E19, just added a little bit of depth around the side of his face and in the crease of his neck, along the bottom of his legs and tail, and then blended that out with the E17. I'm going to fill in most of the rest of that space with the E15, but then I did decide I wanted to add one more color just to add a nice highlight on his face and on the top of his back and tail. So I did pull in the E13. And I'm not going to show it in the video just because we have so many images to color today, but I did do a double layer on all of my images. So you can see that I did 3 of these little guys to be red squirrels, and now I'm moving on to this combo, which is E70, E71, E74, and E77. So when my husband and I go up to Toronto, which we like to do, it's just a place that we love to go. We haven't been there in a while now since with everything going on, but when we go up, there are often these black squirrels that you can see as you're driving down the streets, and they are just so cool looking. And I know this is a brown combo, but it does have a lot of gray tone to it, and by the time I get finished with the second layer, I think these almost look like black squirrels. So that's what I'm going for. If they're dark brown, that's totally fine with me too. But again, I just started with that E77 and laid in a little shadow, and then started blending out with the E74. I'm going to finish most of him with that E71, and then just like with the sleeping squirrel, I saved a few little places on his face, and in this case I did his belly and the tip of his tail with that E70 for a little highlight. I did the little baby squirrel with that combo as well, and for the last little guy, I'm going to just make him a gray squirrel. So I'm using W00, W1, W3, and W5. So I'm just going to lay in the shadow with the W5 along the back side of his body. Since he's facing to the right, I'm going to have them on the left, and then I'll blend forward with that W3. And also make sure to add a little bit of shadow on the underside of his arm and on the underside of his tail. And then I will continue blending with that W1, and then save the face and belly and the top of the tail for that lightest shade, the W00. So my squirrels are going to be an all-inclusive colony as well. They're accepting all shades and colors, just as we all should. For my acorns, I'm using E50 and E51 for the nut. So I'm just doing a little flicking motion from one side with that E51. I tried to do it on the bottom of the nut, or else where it would be like overlapped by another nut, where that would be casting the shadow, and then blend it out with the E50. And I forgot to do the ones in the squirrel's hands, but I will do those off screen. And then for the cap, I'm using E57 and E59, and just making sure to add that shadow on the same side that I put the shadow on the nut so it looks consistent. And then I'll blend that out with the E57, just fill those in since they're so little tiny. And then I will color the handle of the rake with those shades off screen. For the wagon, I pulled out R43, R46, and R59, And I started with that R59 and added a little shadow on either side and then also around that lip. And then I began to blend that out with the R46. Now, I probably shouldn't have used the R43 with this combo. It just had too much colorless blender and it was too small of a space. Reds are notorious for bleeding outside of the line, and having that lighter shade just really pushed things out and it did not look nice. So I'm going to fill this in, and then I'm going to try to do a little tip-to-tip action with the R43, picking that up off the R46. But I don't know what happened. It just didn't work at all. It kind of looked dirty. So I thought about restamping it, but I wanted to show you guys that you really can save almost any image. So what I'm going to do is color in the little yay squirrel's mouth with that R43, and then I'm going to let that wagon dry. And instead I'm going to bring in the R56 as a midtone and use the R46 as the highlight shade. But I'm going to wait until that wagon has completely dried and then just color over that when I do my second layer. It needs to be dry though, otherwise you're just going to continue to push those colors outside of the lines. So in the meantime, I'm going to move on to doing the leaves in my leaf pile, and I wanted to show you those on screen because I'm not going to show the wagon on screen. I forgot to hit record for that, so I just left the leaves in the video so you could see what that combo looks like, and it definitely worked a lot better than the first one. So now you can see the wagon is fixed and it looks totally fine. You can't even tell that there was ever a goof. So then I'm moving on to an orange combo. I'm using YR04, YR07, and YR09. I really considered using a little bit more of a dull combo for the oranges because it would be more in keeping with the fall colors. But I decided since the squirrels were all neutral and pretty much the only pops of color on the card were from these leaves, I decided to keep them all nice and bright and really saturated colors. So for my yellows, I'm using Y13, Y15, and Y17. I'm just going to do 2 more leaves in that pile and then another one off screen. And then I'll use for some greens, G40, G94, and G99. I wanted something that had a bit of an olive tone to it, and so this worked really well for that. The G99 is even called olive. So I just carefully added that G40. Again, that color has a lot of colorless blender in it, but the greens just don't bleed out as bad as the reds. So one color that I love to throw in the mix for fall is purple. I just think it looks so pretty and it's a little bit unexpected, but it still totally goes with the other fall shades. So for that, I'm using V93, V95, and V99. And then I'm going to take a black gel pen and just go over the 2 little squirrels who have their eyes open just to make them bright and shiny. And then I will trim all of these images out with the matching dies. So I wanted to make a comic book style card today, so I've taken the Lawn Fawn peekaboo backdrops and die cut that 3 times out of some craft cardstock, 1 time out of some mermaid cardstock just so I could use the inserts. And then I cut down 2 pieces of cilantro cardstock with the stitch hillside borders, and I'm going to trim those down with that peekaboo backdrop as well so that I have the pieces that perfectly fit inside. And then I'm going to start adhering those frames to the card front. So I'm adding a very thin bead of glue. If you add too much, it will come up through that stitching detail. So I'm going to just add that to my card, and I realized that I must have trimmed down my card base to be a little bit too big because this should normally fit perfectly on an A2 size card. So at first I pulled it off and then I thought, no, I'm just going to put that back on and trim down the excess with a pair of scissors. and that worked just fine. So there you can see me moving on to the second layer. I wanted to build up this frame just so that it's just a little bit more, I don't know, it just has a little more heft to it. It just, well, it frames things up because it's got just a bit more height to it. So I added a second layer and then another bead of glue all around, all on the inner parts as well. And then I'll add that third and final layer of the frame, just layering that right over top. And then I could have left the inserts out because my card base was mermaid cardstock anyway, so it's the same exact color, but I just wanted that also to be a little bit taller in the card. It just makes the card so nice and sturdy. So I decided to insert one layer of the background there. So I'm just fitting those in and making sure that they are pressed down firmly on all sides. And then when I have the green landscapes in there as well, so it'll make for 2 layers, but the frame is 3 layers, so it's still a bit higher. So I'm going to fit those green hillsides into the scene now. And I just set those aside as they went together so I wouldn't get mixed up, so that they look nice and seamless. And I'm just using liquid glue to adhere everything on the card today. So once I have that last little square filled in, I'm going to set this aside and work on my sentiment. And for that, I'm using a piece of ground coffee cardstock, and I've prepped that with my EK Success powder tool so that I can stamp my sentiment, and I used Versamark ink for that. And I'm using the sentiment that says, "Hello friend, let's go nuts." So that's 3 different parts there that I put together from the options on the stamp set. I'm going to coat that with some white embossing powder and tap off the excess, and then I will bring that to my heat gun. I'll heat it up from the back side first just to eliminate any warping, and then I'll turn that to the front and melt that until it's nice and white and shiny. And I will buff off the excess powder with a Pink and Main microfiber cloth, which works great for that. Then I'm going to pop my card base in my MISTI so I can stamp on the inside, and I'm using Peacock ink for that. And I'm stamping out 2 more of those squirrels, including the one that did not make it to the front of the card, and the sentiment that says, "I'm here for you when life gets nutty," which I think is just perfect for what's going on right now. So I love that. So I'm going to move on to finishing up my card front now by adding 2 clouds from the Spring Showers die set. I just used the smallest ones, and I'm going to put one in the top left corner and one in the bottom right, just so it's nice and balanced there, and it's going to help me fill in a little bit of the background of my scene. Then I will bring in my images, and I'm going to start in the top left corner, and I'm going to add this little guy who looks like he's taking a flying leap into the air. So I'm going to put him up in the sky so it really looks like he is jumping. And then next to him in the next window, I'm going to add that pile of leaves. Then I will grab my favorite squirrel of the bunch, which is this little guy that Lawn Fawn calls the Yay Squirrel because he looks like he is cheering. And I'm going to add him over on the right-hand side. And if you're wondering why I keep scratching the sides of my die cuts, for some reason I'm getting like just a little bit of extra paper or something that's just kind of hanging on there. It's super thin, so I just was wiping those off before I add them to the card. So I'm adding my wagon down in the 3rd window, the bottom left, and I'm going to add the pile of acorns in the back of it, and then I'll add the little squirrel who is pulling it by just tucking him behind that handle. And then I'll take the sleeping squirrel that's kind of cuddling his little acorns, and I'm going to add him to the front of the wagon. So I wanted to work quickly there so that I could have time to manipulate those images. I'm tipping that pile of acorns so that it looks even higher, because the gap is going to be hidden behind him, so you'll never know. And then in the fourth square, I'm going to put the squirrel that is holding the acorn, and I'm going to have him giving that to the baby squirrel. So I'm going to add the baby, and then I will reposition the first little guy so I have them just spaced perfectly. And now that I have all of my main images on the card where I want them, I can begin to add the little accessory images. So I'm going to put the rake next to the leaf pile, just kind of laying down as if he stopped in the middle of working so that they could jump in the pile of leaves. And then the little black squirrel up in the top corner, he was collecting acorns, but he kind of stopped when he saw what the yay squirrel was doing, and he decided that he was going to take a break and have some fun. I'm going to add a few little leaves here and there to just bring those pops of color to the card, like I mentioned earlier, because otherwise the card, just doesn't have a whole lot of color on it to scream fall. And I definitely wanted those fall colors on there because this is for our current Lawn Fanatics challenge, which is Awesome Autumn. So I needed those, pops of color and those fall leaves to really tie into the theme of our challenge. So if you'd like to check that out, check down below for a link. We would love to have you come play along. So I'm just trying to make sure that I have those colors spread around. So I wanted to make sure not to add a red leaf in the square with the wagon, for example, since I already have red down there. So I did the orange leaf instead. And I also tried to do a variety of those two sizes here and there. So I added a little green leaf down toward the bottom of the top right square. And then I'm going to tuck another purple leaf back behind the sleeping squirrel and the acorns. And then I die cut my sentiment into a strip using the Everyday Sentiment banners. And I had a little bit of excess embossing powder on one end, so I just took my sand eraser and scraped those off. Real easy to do, and it works like a charm. And then I'll add a little glue to the back of that, and I'm going to line that up in the center of the card on that middle strip. But the more I looked at the card, I just felt like it needed one more leaf in that bottom right corner, and I decided to make that yellow so that it's kind of like a crisscross. I have the purple in the top right and the bottom left, and then I have the yellow in the top left and the bottom right. And that is going to complete my card for today. So there's another peek at the inside. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I had so much fun making this squirrel card. I'm super happy to play with this stamp set. If you did like it, please be sure to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe and ring that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. I've been posting new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So lots of new content. If you'd like to keep watching, here are 2 extra videos I thought you might also enjoy. You can click on either one of those to check them out. And don't forget to check the description bar below the video for links to all of the products I used today. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye-bye.